Hi, and thanks for joining me. There's been a bit of a break in the wet spell, so I'm off for a ride today, and we're on the Himalayan. We're heading down into Nottinghamshire, then over into Lincolnshire, and we'll follow the River Trent north and pass through the riverside villages. We'll see if we can find any interesting bits and bobs on the way. Now, we do come across a rather gruesome murder. I'm heading down to Retford and we'll pick up the journey from there. It's a bright day, but pretty cold. It was about 6 degrees when I set out, but it's windy, so there's a wind chill. I've got my heated grips on and they're doing a great job, so I'm actually feeling reasonably warm. The wind might be a bit of a problem for the sound, but I'll do my best to adjust that so it's not too intrusive. We've left Retford heading south on the A638 and we're just passing through the village of Gamston or Gameston. Just on the western edge of the village is Gamston Airport. Nowadays it's used for small private aircraft and there's a few flying schools based there, but it was built in 1942 and served as an RAF flying school. It had 3 long concrete runways and it was used for both bomber and fighter aircraft training. It closed in 1945 when the war ended. In the early 1950s it was used by a couple of motorsports clubs for a motor racing circuit until it reopened in 1953 as an RAF flying school again. In 1975 a gliding club started using one of the runways and that continued till 2005. 2011 though saw the airport purchased by Thatcham Research. They set up a motor industry testing site that operates today alongside the aircraft activities. We're right at the side of the A1 here, and this is the village of Markham Moor. Now, if you drive up and down this stretch of the A1 at all, you'll have seen Markham Moor services and truck stop. It's a pretty big rest area, so you can't really miss it. To the right at this roundabout, you've got access to the A1, but we're taking the A57 towards Lincoln. We've just bypassed East Markham and here on the left we've got the Pheasant Brewery. It's based at Highbrex Farm and though it's relatively new, it opened in 2012. Records show that there was a brewery on this farm back in the 17th century. The name comes from the cottage next door that was originally a pheasantry that bred and reared game birds. We're officially into winter now and all the trees have lost their leaves, and just up to the right you can see 2 large balls in the branches which I'm pretty sure are mistletoe. At any other time of year you'd probably never notice them. Stopping at these traffic lights, and another thing I couldn't help noticing was the Union Jack flying up above the house. Now I love to see this, though I have to admit I don't have one flying outside my house, though perhaps I should. Wish more people would do it as a sign of pride in our country, but over here it just doesn't seem to be the done thing. In many countries this is quite a usual thing, and having visited America for instance, you can't look anywhere without seeing a Stars and Stripes flying. Just an observation, don't want to get into political debate, just feel we could be a bit more patriotic in this country. As we leave Dalton, we've got the old church of St Giles here on the left. It's a 12th century building and it's Grade 2 listed, though it's not now in use and it's not in very good condition. Entering Dunham-on-Trent now, which is a nice old village, and there's a few listed buildings here. That's the War Memorial, which is Grade 2. This is the old Ship Inn, that dates from the late 1700s. As we leave, there's St Oswald's Church that dates from the 15th century, and it's Grade 1 listed. Just east of the village is Dunham Toll Bridge, and it spans the River Trent, which just here forms the border between Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire. A bridge was first built here in 1832, but prior to that the crossing was by a ferry. The original bridge was a 4-span cast iron structure, but the present day steel one replaced it in 1977, but it still used the original stone piers. I just get the thumbs up from the bloke in the booth, because motorcycles are free. Thank you very much. We're leaving the A57 now, and we turn north up the A1133 towards Gainesboro. We'll be bypassing the village of Newton-on-Trent. We're at Lauterton now, and there's an interesting memorial in the village, so we'll just stop for a quick look and pay our respects. It's an aircraft propeller on top of the plinth and 2 plaques on the stone base, and it remembers the crews of 2 aircraft that crashed near the village during the Second World War. The first was a short Stirling bomber that crashed in June 1944 with the loss of 5 of the crew. On the other side, a Lancaster bomber that crashed in August 1944 when 2 airmen died. It's only about a week after Remembrance Sunday, so the flowers, wreaths and crosses are all still in place, which is nice to see. This is Torksey Lock we're approaching. We're going to join the A156 from Lincoln up to Gainesboro. Just here on the left is the White Swan Inn. Now this dates from the late 1700s, and it's a Grade 2 listed building. It also played its part in a rather strange and grisly tale. In 1805, one Tom Otter, a labourer on the canals, was working in the Lincoln area. Records tell that he was a nasty piece of work, and one description of the time says he was malicious and revengeful and cruel to horses and other animals. He'd been married for a couple of years and had a daughter, but for some reason he was working under an alias using his mother's maiden name. Whilst there, he met Mary Kirkham, got her pregnant and had to marry her. Or, as the newspaper article at the time put it, he became criminally intimate with a young woman, and she proving pregnant, he was compelled by the parish officers to marry her. Now, under the Bastardy Act of 1733, he could be made to marry her by the local authorities to reduce their liability for the illegitimate child. And as he was going under an alias, no one knew he was already married. This was colloquially known as a knobstick wedding, and it predates the term a shotgun wedding. Following the wedding, Tom and Mary were at Drisney Nook, which is just down the road from Torksey Lock. And though it's not clear exactly what happened, Mary's body was found the next morning with her head beaten to a pulp with a large hedge stake, that was found lying close by. Tom Otter was arrested the same day in Lincoln. A few months later, Tom was tried at Lincoln, found guilty of murder and sentenced to hanging and dissection. Back then, by law, the body of a murderer couldn't be buried, but it had to be either dissected or hung in chains on the gibbet. For some reason, his sentence was later changed to hanging, then the gibbet. He was hanged at Lincoln Castle, and his body was hung in chains on a gibbet on Saxelby Moor, which was near the site of the murder. 5 years later, his body was still hanging there because it was reported that a bird was nesting and rearing young in the skeleton's open mouth. The gibbet, which was actually supposed to be the last one standing in Lincolnshire, finally blew down in strong winds in 1850. The remains of the irons are now on show in Doddington Hall. The only physical reminder of this event now is that the lane where the gibbet stood is named Tom Otter's Lane, and it's just off the A57. There's also Tom Otter's Bridge very close by. So, where does the White Swan Inn come into all this? Well, the hedge stake that was used to kill Mary was kept for many years, and it was put on show at various inns around the area, one of which was the White Swan at Torksey Lock. Legend has it that it would mysteriously disappear from its mountain each year on the night that Mary was killed, and be found the next day at the site of the murder, covered in gore. They tried all sorts to secure it, including iron hoops and staples, but nothing worked. For a long time there were supposed to be marks on the wall of the White Swan where the ironwork had held it in place. To put an end to it, it was eventually burned by the Bishop of Lincoln outside Lincoln Cathedral. We're just coming into Gainesboro now, and Harold's in need of some petrol, so I'll stop here and we'll fill up. As we come out of Gainesboro, we're passing through Morton. This is more a suburb of Gainesboro now, but it was a village in its own right. It's recorded in the Domesday Book as Mortune, and consisted of just 4 dwellings. Today the population's over 1,300. This is Walkerith. The name comes from the Old English for a landing of a fuller. Now, fulling was part of the process of producing cloth, but was also known as tucking or walking, hence the walker bit. There was a ferry crossing here before the bridge was built over the Trent at Gainesboro, so I guess that's where the fullers landed. Here's the Trent flood banks on the left now, and we'll follow it all the way up to Burringham, where we're going to cross it on the King George V bridge just outside Cadeby. Next we've got East Stopwith. We'll just stop here for a quick look out over the river. We're in Lincolnshire on this side of the Trent, but over the other side there in Nottinghamshire, that's West Stopwith. There was another ferry boat operating across here, but that stopped in 1953. The village pub stands on the riverbank just down to our left, and that's still called the Ferry House. The Trent's the third longest river in the country. It flows over 185 miles from Staffordshire up to the Humber estuary. At this end of the river, it does have a tidal wave that travels up it periodically, similar to the famous Seven Bore, but this one's called the Trent Agir. It can reach a height of about 1.5 metres and travels up as far as Gainesboro. Passing through the village of Wildsworth now. These really are lovely little lanes and villages. It's a real pleasure riding these on a day like this. The Trent being quite a big river, it's not surprising that there were many ferry points to cross it. We're coming into the village of East Ferry here, and this is yet another place where a ferry operated. The village originates from the 13th century and it grew up around the ferry crossing. We'll stop by the village war memorial, just have a little look. Across the other side is the village of Aon Ferry, where the other landing was, and the ferry operated up until the 1940s. You don't see many red phone boxes still in place now. Wonder if it still works. According to official figures, there are still about 470 of these in the country that are still operational. You do see them being used as village notice boards and libraries and that kind of thing. Passing through the hamlet of Susworth here. That's the Jenny Wren pub on the corner that sadly closed at the end of 2022. East Butterwick now, and yet again this is the site of an old ferry that operated across to West Butterwick on the other side of the river. The name comes from the Old English for a butter farm. That's the Dog and Gun pub on the right, and happily that one's still open. They have bike nights there during the summer, and a great setting for an evening run out. It also incorporates the Dark Tribe Brewery that brews a range of traditional ales. The little bridge we're just crossing takes us over Bottisford Beck, and that enters the Trent here. The M180 crosses over us on that flyover. He's flying low there, seems to be heading for Scunthorpe. Right, we're coming into Birmingham now, and this is where we join the A18 and head back over the King George V Bridge, or Cadbury Bridge as it's commonly known, and head back towards home. As we're approaching the junction, the mileometer on Harold has just clicked over the 1,000-mile mark. Another couple of hundred and he should be about running, I think. Okay, I'm ready to wrap it up here. Hope you enjoyed this little ramble. Please leave a like if in fact you did, and a comment, because I always try and answer them. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see any more of my ramblings, and hit the notification button. Hope to catch you on the next one, and cheers for now.